Why are so many UK landlords selling off their buy-to-let properties? Today, I'm joined by Richard Donnell, who is the Research Director of Zoopla. Richard, before we switch the cameras on, one of the topics we came up with was the perceived um, huge sell-off of rental properties by landlords. What are you seeing out there in the market with your data? Talk to me.
Well, the private rented sector grew dramatically from early 2000s, peaking in 2016. And since 2016, over the last 10 years, the total number of private homes has been pretty much flat. And that means that,
Sorry, you say flat.
yeah, so it's roughly peaked at about 5.4 million homes across Great Britain in 2016. Today, it's about 5.5 billion in 2023, 2024. And that's government data. I think what's really happening is there have been landlords selling, but they've just been selling at the same pace as people have been bringing property to market. Now, we've seen a big increase in corporate landlords buying properties, so-called build to rent. And there's still been, even with all this, the noise about a landlord sell-off, there's still been new buy-to-let mortgages taken out every year. So really, we've got a market where agents have just not seen any growth in the total number of properties under management. And look, some of the smaller landlords definitely have been selling off people who just didn't see it as a business. I mean, the government data shows that 40% of landlords bought their first property to live in. So they kind of rented it by accident. They didn't get into this for tax relief, what's my management costs, signing up to HMO licensing and all this, that, and the other. So for some people who went, look, this is just too complicated now. I just want to take my gains, help my kids get on the housing ladder, I'll reinvest somewhere else. There definitely are some of them. And if you were a landlord, an agent, sorry, that had a lot of those people, you will have felt it in your management book. But equally, we're at a position now where 50% of all private rented homes are owned by the 20% of landlords with 5 or more properties. So the sector has been professionalizing. Those larger landlords, 5+ properties, they haven't been leaving as much. They've been doing a bit of portfolio rationalization, upgrading properties, selling where they need to. That's where the growth is coming. And I think that's the opportunity. Now, they do tend to use agents more. About 80% of these larger landlords do use agents. It's the smaller landlords with 1 or 2 properties who a lot of them still self-manage. So, Chris, what do you think?
Well, as you know, I'm a bit of a stato myself, not in your league, obviously. I did some research looking at stamp duties. This is just England, but that's the bulk of it, let's be honest. Looking at stamp duty receipts coming in and obviously the net going out, and also capital gains, because again, you're going to be clobbered capital gains as well. And cross-referencing against the English Housing Survey, I actually concur exactly with what you say, is that the number of rental properties has been flatlining, a slight growth, but very, very small. And it's interesting, agents use the word feel. They feel like it's changing. And the biggest issue I think that letting agents have at the moment is not landlords selling off, because landlords naturally sell off, don't they? They get to their mid-60s and they retire, and is the biggest problem they have is open rent. Open rent today in the UK has, depending on the month, 18 to 20% of the market. If you roll the clock back to 2020, it was 5 to 6%. And you know me, I'm a huge fan of the data source 20EA. They said that in the last 2 years, 51% of the 18 to 20% of rental properties, that property was previously on the market with a high street agent. So I think they are losing, but they're not losing them to the market, they're losing them to themselves.
And this is the self-managing, though, isn't it? Because those landlords have got to not just do letting and management, but do letting, but also self-manage. And this is what I think the Renters' Rights Bill is a
Huge
is a big opportunity, because
opportunity.
I just don't think, I'm not sure, or there's a lot of complexity in the management business, and I think some of the processes you have to follow, the forms you have to follow. Look, if you're one of those professional landlords with 5 or more properties and you want to run it like a business and you're semi-retired or whatever, or you're retired, I mean, maybe you can become an absolute expert and do it yourself. But if for a lot of people, they're so busy, I'm a real believer in if you don't know everything, just get someone else to do it for you, basically. So I think agents should be really, again, profiling themselves. We've done a survey recently on how sellers choose agents to sell their property, but I think the same applies for lettings, which is, people can, a lot of landlords just don't know what they don't know, basically. NRLA are fantastic, but tons of landlords aren't even a member of a professional
Mm.
landlord body and they haven't done training. So I think it's really agents getting the message out there on the benefits of using an agent, the value of using an agent, because again, letting a property is just the very beginning of a far more complicated process, and the Renters' Rights Bill is going to make it even more kind of devilishly and fiendishly complicated.
Because we're not very good at getting across the great awesomeness of an investment, the cash flow that it produces, and it's not all about capital growth, it's about yield as well, and the combination of the two, even in London, you're gonna get 5 or 6% at the moment.
Absolutely, and I think and I think it's that again, the Renters' Rights Bill is going to have a real impact about how you as a landlord engage with your renters, the
And the way
forms,
you're
the
and you're gonna bring
notices,
your rents up, you're gonna have to bring your rents up.
the time legs and whatever. So I think there's going to be a real art and skill into sort of making sure that you look after that cash flow and you don't end up in tribunals or with, people referring you to the council for maybe not following all the rules. So I think again, I think Renters' Rights Bill is probably the single biggest opportunity for agents to promote the benefit of using an agent and to try and win over the sort of 50% of
I mean
landlords that don't use an agent.
I mean, God forbid we actually not we need to manage the portfolio, not just manage the property. We need to sit down with our landlords and actually be investment advisors.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the case. I think it's like, what do you want from your properties? What are you looking to get out of them?
Not
And again, because I think, depreciation, running costs, you've got to have that conversation about cost as well as income, basically. Again, I think that, again, the big thing coming on the horizon is this minimum energy standards proposals from 2028, 2030. Again, I think there's a huge amount of advice that landlords need about getting ready for that and the sort of, depending on where they set the amount of money you can spend. But again, no landlord should be spending material money at the moment because it won't count towards minimum energy standards in
in
2030. So, but this is the sort of content that agents should be writing, publishing, talking about locally, even doing their own landlord webinars, basically, in their local towns.
who'd have thought, eh? Thank you for your time today, Richard.